Welcome to part 17 of this series, the Roman Empire and the Holy Land. This is our playlist for the series. In the previous video we were speaking about, or the last thing we were speaking about was this war between Greece and Carthage, and that it was happening in Sicily. And were the Persians involved in that? Was there an alliance? But now in this video we're going to go back in time a bit going backwards before we move forwards, because I'd like to speak about Assyria and Babylon and Nineveh and the book of Daniel. So we're going to go back a little bit before we move forward. And we're also going to use this famous image of Nebuchadnezzar's dream, so the statue of Nebuchadnezzar that Daniel interpreted. So if we just look at this image, so we were about to start to move towards the Empire of Greece. That's where we're at with the series. But I'd like to just reflect in this video and go back in time and think about this head of gold of Babylon. So this might be a nice video for the people that are new to the channel, but hopefully it'll also be interesting for those that have been watching for a while. So let's think about this image. So it's from the book of Daniel, a major prophet, and we're just going to read this first part here. So from the book of Daniel, this image's head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. And it's just using this image and these metals to describe major empires. And we have spoken about some of these empires in the series so far. The first thing I'd actually like to speak about is that idea of that word traditional that we were speaking about in the previous video, because I don't know if I explained it that well. And the idea that I was trying to get across is that I use this word traditional a lot, but I don't want it to seem like I'm always against the tradition or the traditional. So if we look at this image, this interpretation with the head of gold as Babylon, and the chest and arms of silver as the Medo-Persian Empire, and in the belly and the thighs of bronze as the Greek Empire or the Macedonian Empire, and the legs of iron as the Roman Empire. This has become like the strongest interpretation, or we could say like the traditional interpretation. So I think to go against the traditional interpretation, you've got to be very sure of your ground. It's got to be based on something very strong if you're going to go against this, because this has been built up with many different scholars and over many centuries, and it's become the strongest interpretation. So to go against it, you're going to have to be very sure of your ground. And that's what I was trying to say about this word traditional, that is, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a good word, and it's supposed to be the safer position. So I think that's what I was trying to bring across, that even though this channel has been going against the traditions in terms of the maps, it's not always going to be like that. So when we look at something new like this, the statue, I'm not just going to try to take you on a different route and try to come up with something different just to be different, just to challenge the traditions. That's not what it's about. So I'm definitely not going to challenge this interpretation. I think the only part of it that's got different interpretations that are valid is maybe the feet of iron and clay. There are some different theories about this part, because potentially this hasn't actually come to fruition yet. So that could be open to debate. And there are some different interpretations with the statue, with the other parts as well, but this is I would say the strongest interpretation. So the head of gold being Babylon, that's very important. And that's what we're going to be speaking about, because it might be nice to kind of sum up where we are with the series, where we've been speaking about these empires, but what is the origin of their religion? Where's the root in terms of the royal families, the royal lines, and where's this influence of these empires coming from? So I think the main point I'd like to think about with this statue is that you've got these different major empires, but it's still one statue. All these empires are connected to the head, and the head is Babylon. So we know that the head is the most the most glorious part of the body, because in the head is the brain, and where your thoughts are, and you've also got the mouth, so so you can express what you want to say. So the head is the, I would choose that word, like the most glorious part of the body. And we know that Jesus is described as the head of the church to kind of, show that, the importance of the head. But we know the rest of the body is also very important. You can't work without the rest of the body. But these different empires, there might be different empires in different places, but they're still connected to the head. So I think that's just something to think about. And I think we've kind of been alluding to that in our series, that you've got these different empires, you've got these different dictators and these different rulers, but it's all still connected to the head, which is Babylon. So I think that's I think the image is important that we keep that in our minds. So what I'd like to do is think about Babylon and also Assyria, because in the book of Judith, now this is actually a book of the Apocrypha, so Judith is not found in most of our Bibles, but it says Nebuchadnezzar, king of the Assyrians. So we just spoke about Nebuchadnezzar being the king of Babylon, but now in the book of Judith it's describing him as the king of the Assyrians. So now the book of Judith is questioned by scholars, the accuracy or the authenticity of the book. And now this might look like a bit of a problem. How can they describe Nebuchadnezzar as the king of the Assyrians? But maybe we can make sense of that, and we're going to recap a little bit of the work that we've done. But let's see if we can try answer this. So if we go to our map that we're working on, I want to speak about Asshur, son of Shem. So we can see the colors for these sons. So Asshur is the son of Shem, and this is where I had the territory for the Assyrians, for the beginning of the Assyrian Empire. So if we go to the book of Jubilees and see what it says about the territory that fell for Asshur, it says, "And for Asshur came forth the second portion, all the land of Asshur, and Nineveh, and Shinar, and to the border of India, and it ascendeth and skirteth the river." Now I can't recap everything we've done on the channel, but you see I've got India here, because there's a confusion between India and Ethiopia. So please look for those videos if you don't know why we've got India here. So we can see that Asshur could reach the borders of India, and this makes sense with our picture. But if you haven't been watching the videos, then you might be a bit confused. But yeah, just to try help you if you're new to the channel, even countries like the Yemen, so here, was referred to as India in some of the ancient sources, the Roman and the Greek sources, and parts of East Africa also referred to as India. But the part that doesn't make sense to me is describing the territory of Asshur. So then why does it put that in the description? So it says, all the land of Asshur. No, that doesn't make sense. If you're describing the territory for Asshur, and then to use his name in the description, and if you read this again, does this make sense? "And for Asshur came forth the second portion, all the land of Asshur." Now, why would you put that there? That doesn't make sense. So I think there's something with this name Asshur that we need to try to discover. But let's focus on this part where it says, so Nineveh for Asshur and Shinar. This is the important part, is that the land of Shinar fell for Asshur. And this is going to help us understand why Judith, in the book of Judith, it might be describing Nebuchadnezzar as king of the Assyrians. So let's go to the page on Shinar. So it's very interesting that the land of Shinar, remember, so if you're new to the Bible, or fairly new to the Bible, the Tower of Babel of Nimrod was built in the land of Shinar. And here it says, in the Septuagint, it's called Sennaar. And we've been using this map a lot for the 1710 map of Africa. And it shows in this ancient land of Nubia. We see, look, Sennaar. Now, there's still a region in Sudan today called Sennaar. So we don't need to use this old map. We could just go to, to a modern map. But we see the similarity of Sennaar with the Septuagint, Sennaar. But I always use this map because of this part here where it says Shinar or Susa, and this word Susa could be important. That's why I use this map. So if you think about that, it's saying that the land of Shinar fell for Asshur. Okay, so the land of Shinar fell for Asshur, but we know that Babylon is connected with the land of Shinar. So that means it's going to be Assyrians living in the land of Shinar. So now we can maybe understand why this book says that King Nebuchadnezzar is king of the Assyrians. Because if you rule over Shinar, you're also ruling over the Assyrians. So this could actually be accurate, not an error, even though we know Nebuchadnezzar, is the king of Babylon. So that's, I think that's quite important. And I think that details from Jubilees actually helps us understand that. But it's also Nineveh. That's is a difficult one, because a long time ago I did a video about Nineveh, questioning the archaeological find, because they say they discovered Nineveh, but to me I wasn't sure if it was accurate because it doesn't seem to match the size, the way it's described in the book of Jonah, the prophet Jonah. We might speak about that. So this is why I've got Asshur here, so Asshur son of Shem, because we've made this connection with Shinar. And if we just take that out the way for a second and bring Babylon, so we're saying, if the Tower of Babel was built somewhere in this region, this could be the kingdom of Babylon. So we'd be looking for the kingdom of Nebuchadnezzar in this region, and Babylon growing from this region. And we're saying that this could be, also Assyrians in this region. But I just started to have some different thoughts about Assyria. So this is where I had it on my maps. So the Assyrians, and then the Assyrian Empire would grow from here. But I came across some information that's given me a bit of some different thoughts about Asshur and the Assyrians that I'd like to speak to you about in this video. And we're going to try to think about Nineveh. Okay, let's just make sure that I'm following my notes and I don't go off track. So we can see how there's a connection between Babylon and the Assyrians. Now there's another detail in the Book of Jubilees which is called the Mountains of Asshur. And I've said this I've said it in the past that I didn't understand what it means by the Mountains of Asshur. It doesn't say it in the description here for Asshur. It says it here, the Mountains of Asshur, when it's describing the territory of Lud. I said I don't know what it means by the Mountains of Asshur when we're trying to work out the territory of Lud. And I used to have Lud here with a question mark because I wasn't sure about Lud. So I wasn't sure about the Mountains of Asshur. And there's another thing here. Let's just read the territory for Lud. It's not long. So it says, and they came forth for Lud, the fifth portion, the mountains of Asshur, and all pertaining to them, till it reacheth the great sea, and till it reacheth the east of Asshur his brother. Let's have a sip of coffee. So I think now this is a part where you have to be honest with what we're presenting here. Look how it says that the territory of Lud reacheth the east of Asshur his brother. Now if we go to the map we're working on, we can see that that doesn't make sense with our map. Lud doesn't reach to the east of Asshur his brother. So this would be a problem with this picture. And that's why I've had always Lud with a question mark, because it just felt like something was missing. So we're going to try to see if we can maybe fix that in this video. And please watch some of the other videos if you'd like to know why we're looking at Lud in North Africa here. We might speak about it in this video, but we'll see. It's difficult to put all the information in one video, like a recap, because we've done a lot on this channel so far. Okay, so now we're going to speak about the Atlantic researchers. We're going to go on a little bit of a journey to try connect these things together, what we've introduced in this video. So we're going to speak about Jonah, the prophet Jonah. Let's go to the book of Jonah. We're going to read some of this. Okay, so Jonah chapter 1. Now the word of the Lord came unto Jonah the son of Amittai, saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry against it, for their wickedness is come up before me. But Jonah rose up to flee unto Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. So Jonah flees unto Tarshish. Now we're going to try to think about what we've already spoken about in the series, where we were looking at Tarshish. So Tarshish, son of Japheth. So we were looking at the Iberian Peninsula, because some scholars have connected Tarshish to the civilization known as Tartessos in southern Spain. This has been connected to Tarshish. So we've got that connection, but now we're thinking, is Jonah fleeing to this part of the world? So this is where it's going to get quite interesting. Okay, so Jonah fleeing to Tarshish is at the Iberian Peninsula. Yeah, this part I wasn't expecting to come across this. So remember how I said that I was looking at these scholars that research Atlantic Troy, looking to the west for Troy and the Spartans and the Athenians. So looking more to the west. I wasn't expecting to read this. Caught me by surprise. Let's see if I can find it here. Okay, so one of these researchers says that what connects Messe with the data from the Bible about the prophet Jonas, spit out by the whale at Messe, a large seaside city in Morocco. So I was very surprised when I read this. I can't find the information why this scholar is saying what he's saying, but it's connecting the prophet Jonah and this region of Morocco, so West Africa. So yeah, unfortunately I can't give you the information or the sources to explain how he's making this connection. I don't know if the only connection is because of the similarity of this of the name of Jonah and this connection with pigeon. I don't know if it's just based on that. But if we just think about the picture, so we've got this potential for Tarshish on the Iberian Peninsula, and now the scholar is connecting the story of Jonah with Morocco. So now we're just looking, is this story from the Bible actually happening here? And that's what we're exploring. So the next thing we need to speak about is Jonah going to Nineveh to prophesy and to preach, to get them to come to repentance. But where is Nineveh? So I was saying that the location that they found towards the Middle East, to me it doesn't seem to fit for the description from the book of Jonah. I just want to see if we can find it. Let's go to the next. It might be chapter 3 actually. Let's go to chapter 3. I think it just describes like the size of Nineveh. This part here, it says, So Jonah arose and went unto Nineveh, according to the word of the Lord. Now Nineveh was an exceeding great city, of 3 days' journey. So there's debate about what this means, but it could potentially mean that Nineveh was so great that it took 3 days to go around it, or 3 days to go across it, or to explore it. So can't be sure exactly what it means, but with Nineveh being described as such a great city, I'm not sure if the the discovery they've made suits this. And obviously we're working with a different picture here. So I was looking for Nineveh, because I've got Asshur here, with the Assyrians, and looking for the Tigris in this region and Elam. I was considering Nineveh here somewhere, looking, in this region. That's where I was looking for Nineveh, even maybe a bit further here, towards Chad or Lake Chad. So now it's interesting that when I'm thinking about here, it could be Tarshish, and we're getting this connection with Morocco from that other scholar. Should we not be considering West Africa? And we said in that other video when we were speaking about Atlantis, could the Eye of the Sahara be connected with the ancient civilization of Atlantis in West Africa? And we're saying that should be paying more attention maybe to what's going on over here. there could be important things happening here that could be going that we're missing. So let's speak about that. Okay, so now we're going to go to the research that we have done on this channel before. We did a video about the Assyrians. Were they in Africa? And we used this source. This is very interesting. An Assyrian successor state in West Africa, the ancestral kings of Kebi, as ancient Near Eastern rulers, by Diarchlange. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name, but that's how I'm going to say it. This was very interesting research, and I'm just going to give you a quick summary. If you're really interested in this, you can read this. I'll put it in the description below. I just want to tell you the basic idea of this. So I'll use the map in this work. So now I'm going to use that word traditional again, but this is traditionally where we're told the empire of Assyria is, or was, sorry. Now it's saying after the collapse of the Assyrian Empire, these Assyrian refugees, they came, you can follow this journey, to West Africa and had the influence on the state of Kebi. So I've got that on the map here. So you can see roughly this is where, Kebi is in Nigeria. So I thought this could be very important information for this investigation that we're doing. So Assyrians, refugees coming to West Africa and maybe influencing these empires of Kanem-Borno and also maybe like the Songhai Empire. And I thought this was really amazing because it really could support this picture that we're working on. So we're not obviously going to be agreeing exactly with their interpretation of the data or the information, because we're looking at at a different picture, but we can still use it. And I was wondering that, I think I said it in one of the earlier videos when we were talking about this, if the scholar that did this work, Diarchlange, if he could see the picture that we're working on, would it make him reevaluate? Would it make him look at the information again and see something different? If he was to think about the work that we're doing. So that would be interesting. But let me show you something that I actually missed the first few times that I was looking at this. If we go back to the top. I just want to look at this one part. I'm not going to read this all out. But it speaks about these two places, Kabawa and Madiana. And then it connects them with Asshur and Nineveh. So these two cities of Assyria. So the city of Asshur and Nineveh. That these two words, Kabawa and Madiana, could be referring to Asshur and Nineveh. And the interesting thing is, when I searched for this Madiana, there is actually a place in Senegal called Madiana, the same spelling. But then I looked for another variation, a very similar variation, and we have Madiana in Gambia. So I was just starting to think, I know that's not what they're saying in this work. They're saying that if we go to that map again, try to get there faster. Well, it doesn't matter, I can use the map here. But they're saying that the Assyrians came from this region of the Middle East to West Africa. But I was saying in the video that we did, were the Assyrians always on the continent, and the migration, was happening on the continent. And now, just saying potentially we have this connection with, with West Africa and Madiana. And could this be connected with Nineveh? Because it would be very interesting, if Nineveh was actually, towards West Africa. Now, I'm not putting it there because let's say I'm not putting it there based on anything. I don't know, how shall I say it? I haven't got anything very strong to give you to definitely connect Nineveh with West Africa. But if you put all those things together that we spoke about in the video so far, where we got, Tarshish in southern Spain, and for some reason we had that other scholar connecting Morocco, with the story of Jonah and the whale. And now we've got this other information with the with the Assyrians refugees coming to West Africa, and we got this source saying that Madiana could be referring to Nineveh. And when you search for this word, you get a few interesting connections with West Africa. So it's not like I'm saying it's definite or anything, but I just thought it was interesting to maybe consider Nineveh being this far to the west, because that would change how we think about Asshur and the Assyrians. Because I had the Assyrians here, towards Nubia, the Sudan, but now we could also be thinking about Asshur or Assyrians here to the west. So that's what I'm starting to wonder. If you just give me a second, maybe we need to put Asshur in two different locations. Maybe I just did, let me just delete that for a second. Could there be Assyrians in West Africa and also Assyrians towards the Sudan? And when this empire collapsed, we did have this migration coming towards Nigeria, but maybe it was coming from different directions. But that that needs to obviously correlate to the evidence that is in this work. Does it match this evidence in this work? But I was just wondering whether this kind of new way of thinking could also make sense for Lud. Because now, if we go back to Lud and think about what we've read, remember how it said that the territory of Lud reached to the east of his brother Asshur. Now we can see that the picture might actually make sense, because you can see how Lud could reach to the east of his brother Asshur. So yeah, I just thought it was very interesting, this new information, because it could start to make it come together. But the thing still that remains a bit of a question is the mountains of Asshur. Remember we spoke about the mountains of Asshur, because that's important for Lud. So I was just trying to consider, I haven't got any, I haven't got an easy explanation why I'm thinking this, but I'm thinking about these Atlas Mountains in North Africa. These Atlas Mountains, whether they could be the mountains of Asshur, because then that would really start to make sense if these are the mountains of Asshur, because it says that the mountains of Asshur came forth for Lud, and we got Lud by North Africa and these Atlas Mountains, but were they called the mountains of Asshur? And you can see how these mountains reach towards the Great Sea, and the Great Sea could be to the Mediterranean. So the territory of Lud reaches towards the Great Sea. So then it all starts to kind of fit with Jubilees, and also our picture also makes sense. So that's quite interesting. I hope you found that interesting, with the connection with Jonah the prophet and West Africa. And also, if you're new to the channel, to try to see how Babylon and Assyria is connected, because this territory of Asshur, you could also call it Babylon. So the king of Babylon would also be ruling over the Assyrians. So that's could be important, trying to understand these other books, that might be questioned that they're not accurate, but they could actually be accurate. So is there anything else I wanted to speak about in this video? Yeah, I wanted to also just make this point with these West African empires, Kanem and also Songhai. Just want to show you a picture of this. This could be interesting. Okay, so this is a picture of the Empire of Songhai, and this is a picture that I found of Kanem, the Empire of Kanem. And this is the older one here, roughly 600 BCE, and then it shrunk to a smaller one here. And notice how on this one it reaches towards the Sudan. I picked this one because it's interesting how, I don't know why they've done it like this, but see how it comes towards the Sudan. Now remember, we're thinking about the land of Shinar, which fell for Asshur. So I thought it was interesting the way it's it's reaching towards the land of Shinar. So I'll explain what I'm thinking. What I'm thinking is connected with this work of these, the scholar connecting these Assyrian refugees coming to West Africa and having an influence on these empires, like the Songhai Empire, this one, and also Kanem. What if the information that they've got they're just not maybe putting it together correctly. I don't mean to be I don't want it to sound I don't know what to say, but now with all kind of politeness, maybe they haven't quite put it together. Maybe these empires of Songhai or Kanem are actually showing us what the old Assyrian Empire may have looked like. If you know what I'm trying to say. So if you go back to this one, maybe this is showing us what the old Assyrian Empire may have looked like combined with this one. And then when the Assyrian Empire has crumbled, this could be a reflection of what it was. So even coming towards the modern time, we can see it might give us a glimpse of what the former Assyrian Empire may have looked like, with this one combined, also with this one. That's just something I'm thinking at the moment, that especially the way it reaches here towards the Sudan, like reaching towards the land of Shinar or Babylon, and the Assyrian Empire would have done that. So maybe we can use these African empires, these West African empires, to try and understand the empire of Assyria. So that's just a thought that came into my mind recently. Who built Nineveh? Maybe we'll finish with that. So if we go to the Bible, so this is chapter 10, where it speaks about the table of nations. It says, speaking about Nimrod, Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord, wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar. So we see now, that Babel was in the land of Shinar, and we've spoken about that. Then it says, out of that land went forth Asshur, and builded Nineveh, and the city Rehoboth and Calah, and Rezin between Nineveh and Calah, the same is a great city. So now there's debate about this, because it's speaking about Nimrod, and then it suddenly switches and starts speaking about Asshur going forth and building Nineveh. But if we go to the mythology, there's a character in the mythology called Ninus, or Ninus, and it tells us that Ninus was the founder of Nineveh. And maybe this word Nineveh could be coming from Ninus, so the city of Ninus. But some scholars connect Ninus with Nimrod. So then it would be saying that Nimrod was the founder of Nineveh. So there is, there's debate about this, but why does it suddenly switch from Nimrod to Asshur? And it says Asshur built Nineveh, but is it really Nimrod that built Nineveh? So this is quite interesting, because it might answer a few other things we brought up in the video, because if it is Nimrod building Nineveh, then Asshur could be another name for Nimrod. And then that could then make sense for the Book of Jubilees. So remember how it said, and for Asshur, so Asshur, son of Shem, came forth the second portion, all the land of Asshur. Now remember we said that doesn't make sense. Why would you use his name like this when you're describing his own territory? But maybe it's not Asshur, son of Shem. Maybe this is referring to Nimrod, so the land of Nimrod. And then the mountains of Asshur, it might not be referring to the mountains of Asshur, son of Shem. It could be referring to the mountains of Nimrod. So that could be maybe like a way of trying to understand the mountains of Asshur and what they could mean. We're thinking about, maybe it's not Asshur, son of Shem. Is it another name for Nimrod? So that could be like open up another interesting trail to try to find the, those connections. But I just think maybe that makes more sense, that this Asshur might not be referring to Asshur, son of Shem. So I hope you found the video interesting. It's definitely throwing up some interesting things for this picture, with now considering Assyrians maybe further to West Africa, Western Africa, but also still thinking about Assyrians with Babylon. So I'm not saying that I was wrong to have Asshur here as well, because we see the king of Babylon referred to as the king of the Assyrians, and getting more confident with Lud here as well. That's looking quite strong, because we know that in the Bible Lud is often mentioned alongside Put. You see that? So you could be saying Lud and Libya to show that connection with Lud and Africa. So yeah, I know we're covering quite a lot. So I think we'll leave it there because we've done quite a lot. We used this statue, and we might use this statue as we go forward to move on to the empire of the Macedonians and Greece. And maybe also speak about Daniel a bit more, because we learn also from Daniel about the four kingdoms. So the four kingdoms, which also seem to work together with the statue of Nebuchadnezzar. Maybe we'll speak about that in the next video. So thank you for watching this video, and we'll see you in the next one.